The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, he'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
The South Kesteven series is sponsored by Gainsborough Cycles 01427 617 752. For all your cycling needs, this is your one-stop shop located at 20 Ropery Road, Gainsborough, or online at gainsboroughcycles.com. There's a link in the description. Gainsborough Cycles, ask for Trevor Halstead. Welcome back to South Kesteven again, folks. Now, can you imagine living in a village like this, where you drive along the main road coming into the place, and the first thing you see before you get home is this amazing building? Now, wouldn't this be fantastic to live in? Well, that's less of a home and more of an entrance way, because if you go through that arch, it leads to a big parkland where there's an equally big house. It's got an interesting history. You can find this in Denton. Denton Valley Farm. Today on TVI we continue to the west as we head for the border between South Kesteven and Melton. We're in a parish called Denton, about 3 miles away from Grantham. It means village in a valley, which is probably one of the simpler derivations you'll ever hear. It was the site of an ancient Roman settlement and may also be a site of the Beaker culture based on some archaeological finds. Now, Denton was industrially quite the important little village. It had a major role to play in the quarrying of iron ore, something this area was once abundant in. Iron ore was first quarried in the parish from 1888 to 1910. It began close to the boundary with Woolsthorpe and was taken by a narrow gauge tramway to a branch of the Great Northern Railway. After ceasing operations for 8 years, mainly due to the onset of World War I, it began again in 1918 near the boundary with Harston in Leicestershire. The tramway was extended to serve the new Denton quarries from the Great Northern terminus. From then on, quarrying formed one of the main sources of employment in Denton before finally disappearing in 1974. The remains of the railway lines can still be seen here today if you know where to go. Before iron ore, Denton had another major industrial role to play. North of the village is the route of the Grantham Canal. In Denton, the canal was fed by a reservoir, one of the largest remaining pieces of its infrastructure. We'll see that in this video as well. Also on our list in Denton, we have a church, a village hall and a pub called the Welby Arms. Tying it all together is Denton Hall, or Denton Manor, the principal residence of the parish. Let's go, folks! To get things underway in Denton, we have this magnificent building at the end of the main village street where it meets the A607. It's an entrance gate, or gate lodge, as opposed to a house, but it could certainly pass for a fine country residence itself. The track that runs through the archway leads to Denton Park. In the park is the principal residence here, Denton Manor House. Let's learn a bit about that. Since the reign of Henry VIII, the Welby family have lived at Denton. Their first house was a timber-framed hall with a Tudor oak frame within it, probably from an earlier building. Little is known of the houses they occupied between their first hall and the early 19th century, but what remains in Denton Park today gives us some idea. Denton Manor House is a Grade 2 listed 17th century building, but it's had some extensive alterations and additions. These came along in 1953 and 1965, undertaken by Marshal Sisson. For a time previously, the Welbys had another house, commonly known as Denton Hall. It was designed by Sir Arthur Blomfield, the same guy behind the Usher Art Gallery in Lincoln. Denton Hall was made of 100,000 tons of hammer-carved stone and 150,000 bricks. It was built for Sir William Earl Welby Gregory and was constructed between 1879 and 1883. Sir William, the 4th Baronet, was the MP for Grantham and South Lincolnshire. His wife was Victoria, Lady Welby, a philosopher of language, a musician, and a well-known watercolour artist. Their son was Charles Welby, the 5th Baronet. He was the MP for Newark and Under Secretary of State for War. Sir Charles became chairman of Kesteven County Council and was one of the prime movers in the reorganisation of local government in this part of Lincolnshire. In fact, the far-reaching changes introduced under the Local Government Act of 1929 are thought to have been worked out by Sir Charles and a close friend. That friend was none other than Neville Chamberlain, then Minister of Health at the time, but later the Prime Minister. He was a frequent visitor to Denton. That later hall is no longer here. It suffered a fire in the early 1900s which broke out in the Welby's private chapel. It was caused by an overheating flue. Although the house was restored, it was eventually torn down in 1939 at a time when country properties of its size had become too large to maintain. Only the stables and the Tudor gatehouse alongside the main road into Leicestershire remain, together with a splendid avenue of ancient horse chestnut trees. That avenue now leads to a new and spacious house that was built on the site in 1962 for the 6th Baronet, Sir Oliver Welby. It reused the small nucleus of the original property that had survived in the stable court area from 200 years before. There are some other bits in the park. It houses a series of large ponds and a freshwater spring known as St Christopher's Well. The latter is hidden in a grotto built from fossils and shells in 1823. Within the cave is an inscription that reads "Fairy of the Well." The History of the County of Lincoln, Volume 2, published in 1834, says of the well, it's a spring much frequented from the medicinal virtue ascribed to its waters. It's very pure and similar to that of Malvern Wells in Worcestershire. Well, we're not in Worcestershire, but who says Lincolnshire can't have clean, fresh spring water? So despite the fact that Denton has the big parkland and the houses that it's possessed over time, this village is not all that well known, to be honest with you. It's kind of right on the fringes of Lincolnshire on the Leicestershire border, and it kind of gets forgotten about. Well, let's put it on the map. We're walking up the main street here, and there's plenty to talk about in this place if you know where to look. So now we know a bit about the Welbys and their houses, let's explore where everyone else in Denton lives. This is a simple little village, all things considered. Denton consists of one main street, a secondary street which leads to the church, and then a series of lanes leading away from them both. The name Denton dates back to the Domesday Book, where it's recorded as Den Tune. It simply means the village in the valley. It had become Denton by 1174. There is a long history of occupation here. Traces of an Iron Age community have been found by archaeologists over the years, and a Roman villa was discovered in 1727. More on that later. There is a certain undeniable charm to this place. It's full of well-built estate cottages dating from the 19th and 20th centuries with grey stone walls and mellow red roofs. A lot of them are made from the warm golden ironstone that was once quarried in the vicinity. The village is spread out around the confines of Denton Park. The village also contains the Welby Arms houses, built in ironstone with grey stone dressings in 1653. They are particularly notable for their massive array of 6 chimney stacks which rise from between 2 roof ridges. Denton is a village that evokes a memory of the English country estate of past times, when the lord of the manor, or the squire as he was often known, had life and death power over his tenants. Denton is fairly famous locally for its street market. The first one was held in 1984, with the proceeds from it going towards the church, the school and the village hall. The street market is now held every year on the first bank holiday Monday in May. It usually features over 150 stalls, children's entertainment and traditional village sports. So on the map, this area here, this open space, we're in between all these bungalows and kind of masonette type houses, I suppose, not quite sure what you call them. This area is marked as a playground, a recreation area, and I believe there used to be some play equipment here, but as you can see, it's not here anymore. I guess the area is still good enough to have a kickabout on. Even though there are signs that say no ball games, it appears they definitely are played here, because someone's left a ball just here. And I guess this little wall is a makeshift goal, I suppose. I don't know, I've no idea. But yeah, there's no play equipment here anymore, if there was. So let's continue. If we head this way, down this little track to the right, you can see a building, a white building on the left hand side. That's the village hall. Now this is a very, very interesting place. Denton has no shop or post office. It does have a village hall though, which is managed by the parish council. This is a corrugated iron shed, formerly used as a World War I barrack hut, and it's still in its original condition. Okay, it's the Welby Arms next, and the name of this place should already make total sense to you, given what we already know about the principal residents of the parish. The Welby Arms is an early 19th century building constructed of coursed ironstone rubble. The side walls are of red brick. Although a number of alterations were made to it in the 20th century, it's been Grade 2 listed since 1979. Now we come to Denton's Grade 1 listed Anglican parish church. This is dedicated to St Andrew. Restored in 1888, it's mainly perpendicular in style. This light and spacious clerestoried building stands in an attractive position overlooking one of the lakes in Denton Park. In the south aisle is a table tomb with an effigy of John Blythe, his wife Margaret and his 6 children. It also has a monument to Richard Welby in the north aisle. The Welby family, of course, were lords of the manor, patrons of the church and benefactors of this parish for several centuries until recent times. The oldest memorials here are floor stones which have lost their brasses. Another engraved memorial is a much worn figure of an unknown priest. Originally, St Andrews only had 4 bells in its tower, but now it has 6. The original 4 were augmented in 1782. This was done by recasting 4 bells and adding 2 new ones. They were rehung in 1855 by the Denton wheelwright and machine maker John Cable. In 1994, the bells were again rehung, this time in metal frames by Hayward Mills Associates. Denton's church is the only religious building in the village today. There is no Methodist chapel. The nearest one of those is in Grantham. Now, if you stand in the churchyard and look that way, you're looking in the direction of Denton's school. But you might not know this, you're actually looking in the direction of 2 former schools. There's the current school, which we'll see in a moment, but there's also this, which is the house that preceded it. Immediately east of the church is the Lees house. This was once the schoolhouse and was built during the 18th century on a piece of common land in a traditional Queen Anne style. Over the impressive stone doorway is an open triangular pediment enclosing the Welby Armorial and the inscription "Learn to know God and thyself, 1720. Denton School was set up as a charity school around 1715 by Mary Welby, the widow of Sir Richard. Her initial endowment was to educate 24 boys and 6 girls from the village. By 1870, the Elementary Education Act had been passed and primary education was encouraged. It may have been about that time that the original charity school in Denton became a national school. By 1874, it had 158 children on roll and the accommodation was becoming too small. To solve that issue, a new school building was erected behind the Lees house in 1894, and that's the one that's still used today. Now, Denton C of E, the school holds a variety of archives dating back about 150 years, including photos, logbooks and registers. Many original features can still be seen inside and outside of this school. After the Education Act of 1944, the building was let by the Welby Estates on lease to the Lincoln Diocesan Trust and Board of Finance. That lease is still in force today. The Lees house, by the way, is still lived in by members of the Welby family, and this present school building and the land it sits on is still owned by them too. Incidentally, for a short time there were 2 schools in Denton. In 1860, an infant school was built elsewhere in the village, but that was demolished in the 1960s. So if you turn right out of the footpath near the school, you're on Park Lane, and this takes you directly south again until you meet another footpath at the end of it, which we're about to come to. If you turn onto that, it takes you back to the main street and back towards the beginning. So not a massive village by any stretch of the imagination is Denton, really, is it? But there's still some bits to see here. You see, to the north of the village, there's a lot more. So, with the village behind us, and very nice it is too, by the way, the rest of this episode will focus on the industrial history of the area. Denton was quite a productive place when it came to iron ore. This whole area had an abundance of quarries which mined it. Iron ore was first quarried here in 1888. It began close to the parish boundary with Woolsthorpe lasting until 1910. Whilst the quarries are no longer here, the remains of the railways they used can still be seen. Once mined, iron ore was taken away from Denton via a narrow gauge tramway. That would lead to a branch of the Great Northern Railway. After ceasing operations for 8 years, mainly due to the onset of World War I, mining began again in 1918 near the boundary with Harston in Leicestershire. The tramway was then extended to serve the new quarries. In 1948 it was converted to standard gauge and connected to the branch railway. This was so that iron ore no longer had to be tipped from narrow gauge wagons into standard gauge wagons. Steam locomotives were used until 1967 when a diesel took over. Until 1974, quarrying formed one of the main sources of employment in Denton before finally disappearing. The final quarry face to close was located near the A607. Iron ore quarrying was quite an intensive and noisy process. The first quarries were worked by hand with the aid of explosives. When it restarted in 1918, steam diggers began to be introduced, and from 1938 it used both electric and diesel machines. Denton might be quiet now, but it was anything but about 50 or 60 years ago. Now, remember earlier we mentioned Denton's Roman villa? Well, excavations in 1959 established that the villa was about 100 feet by 40 feet. It had a detached bathhouse and was thought to have been rebuilt in stone in about 370 AD. We would still be able to see it, no doubt, if ironstone quarrying hadn't been a thing in Denton. That would destroy all of the remains, but there is a section of tessellated pavement from the villa on display in the Grantham Museum today. I don't know about you guys, but I always think there's something eerie and spooky about an old railway bridge. It's like trains used to come along this line here, and they don't anymore. And so, effectively, all that's left are just memories and ghosts, effectively. I wonder how busy this line once was. Who knows? You can walk on this line now. You can walk through underneath this bridge. There's a path been made. So yeah, you can explore this as much as you like, basically. Now then, we have one more thing to see before we leave Denton behind, and it's all to do with industry as well. You see, we know there's an old railway line here. There's also a reservoir to see, and that used to feed the Grantham Canal. Just like at Harlexton up the road, the Grantham Canal passes through Denton Parish. Denton once had a wharf too, although arguably it was never as busy. You can still access the wharf by using a track off Casthorpe Road, which runs north away from the village centre. Once there, you get this view of the canal. One of the main engineering features of the Grantham Canal in this area was something called Harlexton Drift. It was a deep cutting built just wide enough for one-way traffic. There were two passing places too where the canal was made wider, and they were added in 1801. We were on the drift yesterday in Harlexton. Whilst that was doubtless a key part of the canal's development, you could argue that the whole thing couldn't have been without one particular feature on the Denton landscape. Now, normally when we come across reservoirs, we find they were built to supply water to people. Denton was different. It was developed to supply the Grantham Canal. There were two reservoirs which did it actually. One was here and the other was at Nipton, about 3 miles away. Both were on the Beaver estate, and the job of building them, along with the canal cutting, was the responsibility of William King, the agent for the Duke of Rutland. Denton Reservoir has a capacity of 61 million gallons of water. As well as feeding the canal, it's had some other uses in its time. In the winter it was a noted ice skating venue, whilst in the summer it was well used by keen fishermen of the Grantham Angling Association. Pike, bream, roach and perch are all found here. Today, the reservoir is also popular with bird watchers who come here to see coot, moorhen, mallard, teal, pochard, heron, great crested grebe and kingfishers. And that will do us for Denton. If you carry on over the border into Melton from here, you end up in Harston, where the iron ore quarries were just as prevalent as they were here. Next time in South Kesteven, we're heading back over to the east as we take on another run to the north of Grantham. Join me there later this year. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.